And with the conclusion of the 25-26 Premier League season, we have seen the end of the Manchester City Pep Guardiola era, and what a successful era it has been. But a new one might potentially be starting under a new manager, Enzo Maresca. And now, how many players do I think from this season's Manchester City squad should still be there when Enzo Maresca does eventually get appointed and the 26-27 season does start? But before we get into that, please make sure you do like and subscribe. It does help me more than you may know. And without further ado, let's get right into it. And these are all the players here, and I do have them in order, sort of as goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and then attackers. Obviously, Pep Guardiola, and the categories are starting 11, bench, loan, sell, and contract expired, obviously, because I didn't want to sell Bernardo Silva or John Stones. Their contract has just expired. But the starting 11 might not have 11 players in it also. We might be signing new players such as Elliot Anderson, Sandro Tonali, and Palestra. I know we haven't agreed a deal with, but obviously we're still talking about the finances, and Inter Milan have also agreed a deal with him, so that might not be going through. But just these are players that we might have, so they might only be 8, 9, 6 players in the starting 11, but let's get right into it. And starting with Donnarumma, who I absolutely think has to be starting. Now, he has received so much stick from City fans this season, and I do not understand it. His shot stopping is second to none, and I don't think his distribution is as bad as what people make out it is. They speak like James Trafford is Ederson, which he absolutely isn't, and I'm an Ederson lover. He probably is my all-time favourite City player, if I'm being completely honest. So I do love Donnarumma. He's flapping at corners, okay, doesn't help that much, but he makes up for it in shot stopping. And that leads me on to James Trafford, who absolutely, if we can keep him at the club, I think he absolutely has to stay at the club. He is a starting Premier League goalkeeper, and if we're able to have a starting Premier League goalkeeper on the bench, I do not understand why we wouldn't. And then Bettinelli, I think that's how you pronounce it, he's just a third-choice goalkeeper. We signed him to be a third-choice goalkeeper. He's done fantastic this season as a third-choice goalkeeper, so he can just stay as a third-choice goalkeeper. And that leads me on to Núñez, who has had an unbelievable season. Probably the best right-back in the Premier League this season, if I'm being completely honest. I think he has gone completely under the radar, and he is so underrated. And I think he starts under Enzo Maresca. I really do. Enzo Maresca likes fullbacks that are able to invert, obviously with Núñez being a central midfielder in the Premier League previously in his career. He seems like an absolute perfect suitor, and he can overlap if need be and deliver incredible crosses, as we've seen with him assisting Haaland in these seasons. And then Rico Lewis, which is a really, really tricky one. Now, he did have a breakout a couple of seasons ago, and last season it just didn't work at all. He didn't really get any game time. We didn't see him really whatsoever, but I do think with his ability to play in that central midfielder role, Enzo Maresca might look to him and see if he is able to sort of develop into that perfect midfielder for him. I don't know if he'll be able to. I think it'll be one of them. I think Enzo Maresca will look at him. I'm just not sure if it'll work out. I think when Enzo Maresca does get appointed, I do think Rico Lewis will still be in the squad. Whether he then gets loaned out or sold, if Enzo Maresca doesn't like him, I'm not sure. But when Enzo Maresca does get appointed, I do think he should be there. And that leads me on to Kusanov, who I absolutely think should be starting. I think he is the future of England's defence. And I'm going to skip John Stones and put Gay next to him, because I think that is our centre-back pairing. I really do. I think that's them two. They're so young, they've already worked so well together, and they're only going to get better as we go further on. I think they're absolutely outstanding. I know Gay made that mistake against Everton, but that doesn't define a player. He is outstanding, and the fact that he isn't starting for England at the World Cup, it does make me question things a little bit. I do think Gay's better than Ezri Konsa, but you can't complain. Tuchel knows what he's doing. We've just beat Croatia 4-2, so we'll move on. And then John Stones, obviously, his contract has come to a close. As sad as that is, the end of an era for John Stones. And then that leads me on to Ruben Dias. Now, Ruben Dias is in a really tricky spot, obviously, because I think Gay and Kusanov should both be starting over him. But he is still a fantastic player, and he absolutely does still deserve game time. So whether we do rotate between the three sort of centre-backs sort of continuously, I'm not sure. But I do think Ruben Dias' place isn't in the starting 11 anymore. I do think he will come on to help see games out, play all the cup games. When we have Champions League football, definitely be able to rotate in them Premier League games, and he is incredible depth. Having them three as core centre-backs going into next season would be absolutely unbelievable for Manchester City, and I do think that is what will happen. Diaz is obviously good enough to fight for a starting spot, but I just think Gay's ability and Kusanov's athleticism, I think, is just the perfect combination. And then that leads me on to Max Alleyne, who was on loan at Watford, I believe it was. Obviously got recalled when City went through that unbelievable injury crisis where they had effectively no starting centre-backs. And I do think he should go back on loan. He's not ready for City. If he can't find a loan, probably sell him, to be honest. I don't think he is quite there for starting at Manchester City. And then that leads me on to Nathan Ake, who I think should be sold. I think it is the end of Nathan Ake's career. What a servant he has been for Manchester City, an absolutely unbelievable centre back slash left back slash playing left centre back in three at the back. He's absolutely fantastic. Nathan Ake, what a signing he was for Manchester City. But I do think it's time. I don't think he's going to get the game time anymore. I don't think he's going to be able to do what Enzo Maresca wants him to do. Whether Ake's happy sitting on the bench and just sort of seeing out his contract, not really playing many minutes and just being there as a backup. If he is, absolutely fantastic. Keep him. If he's not, I do think it is time to move on. And then that's Josko Gvardiol, absolutely a starter. He's just signed a new 4-year deal at Manchester City, and I was so happy when I saw that. I honestly, I was so scared when I saw that Real Madrid was a potential move for him because he is unbelievable. Obviously, Pep Guardiola's second most expensive sign. I think we signed him for like 90 million or something. He is outstanding, and people have seemingly forgot about that with how good O'Reilly's actually been. And as good as O'Reilly's been, I do think Gvardiol's better, and I think Gvardiol's able to come inside. He is able to overlap. He's so good on the ball. The times he pops up in the box is dangerous from set pieces. But I think Gvardiol's the complete package, able to play centre-back and fill in as well, if need be, if Gayse needs a rest and Ruben Diaz isn't ready for that game, he's able to fill in at centre-back and then maybe put Aït-Nouri or O'Reilly at left-back. I do think Gvardiol absolutely has to start for me. And then Aït-Nouri, it's been a really tricky season for Aït-Nouri, if we're being completely honest. Obviously, he hasn't got loads and loads of game time. He played the Club World Cup, looked absolutely fantastic, and then got that injury. And then just didn't really break back into the squad as much as I thought it would. Obviously, when we signed him from Wolves, I thought it was going to be absolutely incredible. Obviously, I think it created so many chances with Wolves, obviously, with Cunha, and we have got unbelievably talented and creative players in our squad. I thought he would just hit the ground running. Obviously, O'Reilly did so well. He was never able to break through, but I do think Aït-Nouri is good enough for the squad. I think he's more than good enough. I do think we need to keep him. I think he's a great squad option, and if he's happy being a squad option, perfect. And that brings me on to O'Reilly, who absolutely has to start. But I think he should start in the midfield. I really do. O'Reilly for me is one of, if not City's best player. And I think people will see that at the World Cup with how good O'Reilly will actually be in that left back role. But I do think he is good enough to move into that midfield and dominate in there, to be honest. And I think whether he's being partnered up with Rodri, Anderson, Tonali, Cherki, Foden, Reinders, you name it, I think O'Reilly's more than good enough to slot in and be perfect. Not only perfect, be better than perfect in that midfield role. And then that brings me on to Rodri. Now, people might think this is controversial. I don't think Rodri's position in the City squad is set in stone next season. I don't think under Enzo Maresca, especially if we sign Elliot Anderson and or Sandro Tonali, I don't think Rodri's a guaranteed starter. I honestly think Enzo Maresca might prefer Elliot Anderson to play that deeper role. And if it does, you might honestly see Rodri sitting on the bench. Whether he stays at the season, obviously, we're not sure. Whether he stays at the team, obviously, we're not sure. He might move on and go to Real Madrid, but that isn't looking likely. It looks highly unlikely. And whether he signs a new contract or just sort of just see the end of his career, end of his contract, who knows? But I'm going to put him on the bench. I honestly think, if I'm being completely honest, hand on heart, I think Elliot Anderson will take his position off him next season. I really do. And I think Anderson, Tonali and O'Reilly as a midfield three would be absolutely disgraceful, if I'm completely honest. I think that would be probably the most perfect midfield you could actually make. O'Reilly and Tonali and Anderson to be fair, but mainly Tonali and O'Reilly being able to push that ball, the passes that they're able to pull off would be incredible. And then Anderson able to drive with the ball. He is also able to make passes, but I don't think that is the main part of his game, at least not from what I've seen anyway. I just think that is a really complete midfield. I think Rodri will get loads of minutes. Me putting him on the bench does not mean he's not going to play any football. I think he will play gallons of football. I just think Anderson might be the starter. And whether we play Rodri, Anderson and O'Reilly, who knows? There's obviously going to be a lot of rotation, but we'll see. Then that leaves Nico Gonzalez. And now he's another really strange one because if we're bringing in Sandro Tonali and bringing in Elliot Anderson, we've got Rodri, who obviously might be leaving. O'Reilly's coming through. We've got Reinders, who we've just signed. Kovacic is also still in the squad. Is Nico Gonzalez going to get any game time? I love Nico Gonzalez as a footballer. When Rodri was injured, I was absolutely more than happy with Gonzalez filling in our midfield. I thought he did a great job. It was a bit of a shaky start, but then he sort of found his own and became absolutely unbelievable. And for me, I do think there is a place for him at this squad. Obviously, we did spend a lot of money on him. I think it was like 60 million euros or something. I know it's a lot of money and he hasn't had the game time for it, but I think there is a player in him. And I do think Maresca will be able to get that out of him. He's so good on the ball, driving it through the midfield. And I think Enzo Maresca might be able to utilise that with him. And then it's Bernardo Silva, who obviously, another one, absolutely tragic. End of his contract, obviously just gone to Real Madrid, which I know I made a very reactionary TikTok video over it, but I am happy for him. It's going to be a fantastic experience for him, and I'm over the moon that he has got to go to such a big club. Obviously, as Erling Haaland put in his the comment section of the Instagram post that Real Madrid put, we're going to see him in the Champions League anyway, so it'll be lovely when he comes back. And then that brings me on to Tijjani Reinders, who, I'm going to sound like a broken record, is another really tricky one. Obviously, under Pep Guardiola, he didn't get gallons of game time, and to be honest, it looked like we couldn't really work out what his position was. When he came on, he started playing sort of as a second striker. Some game he played really deep when Rodri wasn't playing. What is Reinders' position? And for me, I actually don't know. I really don't know with Reinders. Obviously, at AC Milan, we saw he was a fantastic player. There was no doubt that there was a player in him. And obviously, the goals he did pop up with. And we know he can do it. He has scored goals for City, but I don't know what his position is. Obviously, we signed him last year for quite a lot of money, so I do think we have to keep him. I don't think we're going to sell him. But whether Enzo Maresca is actually able to find the use that he's good for, I'm not really sure, especially with the likes of O'Reilly being in that sort of advanced position. Is Reinders really going to be able to overtake him? I'm not sure, in all honesty. And that brings me on to Mateo Kovacic. I love Mateo Kovacic. I would be absolutely heartbroken if he left the team. I'm going to be completely honest. If we got rid of him, I'd be heartbroken. He is so reliable. Don't get me wrong. He isn't a 10 out of 10 performer, but he will give you a 7 out of 10 performance 100% of the time. Mateo Kovacic comes on, it's reliable. You know what you're getting. It's nothing flashy, but it's not broken. It is just good. A good performance, week in, week out, and it's depth. Which, because we're going to be in so many competitions, hopefully we can go far in all of them competitions. Obviously, we're coming off the back of a double winning the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. I think Mateo Kovacic has got a spot in this team, as coming on off the bench, being able to fill in them Champions League games, say when we need to see out a game or if we're playing a lesser opponent. I think Mateo Kovacic would be absolutely perfect for filling that role. And then it's time for Phil Foden, who has had a really poor 2 years. He had a really good start to this season, but if we're being completely honest, it's been such a poor 2 years. Ever since we won the treble, where he was absolutely phenomenal, he hasn't even really been able to get going again. And you see glimpses of it. Sometimes they're in and around. The glimpses are there. It's just he hasn't hit that form that we want him to hit. But he is our boy. He is a Manchester lad. He's City through and through. And I honestly think next season under Enzo Maresca, obviously we saw it with Cole Palmer under Enzo Maresca. Cole Palmer was absolutely fantastic. Can he get that out of Phil Foden too? Phil Foden is better than Cole Palmer, at least in my opinion. So if Cole Palmer could be that good under Enzo Maresca, there is absolutely no reason why Phil Foden can't too be that good under Enzo Maresca. And then that brings me on to Naipan, who the FMers all know he was the player to have on FM24. Every single new save you made, you would bring in Sabir Naipan, and I must say I did it. I was really excited when we signed him purely because of Football Manager, but I don't think he had the most successful loan at Middlesbrough. I don't think he was getting loads of minutes. Obviously, then we recalled him, and he never really, I don't even think we saw him at all. I think he might have played one cup game, which I don't really remember if I'm completely honest. I do think it's another loan for him. He's absolutely not ready for the first team yet, I don't think, anyway, so I think a loan's more than sensible. And then Rayan Cherki, starter. 30 million euros for Rayan Cherki. We robbed them blind. Lyon, I think that was where we bought him from, robbed. Absolute world beater, Rayan Cherki is. 30 million euros for a player like Rayan Cherki, who is so exciting. I understand his off the ball work isn't fantastic and he can be a little greedy sometimes, but he is still so young. And I think Enzo Maresca is going to absolutely love him. I think Enzo Maresca is going to get the perfect thing out of him. And whether we play him out on the right wing or in that centre attacking midfielder role, I don't know how that'll quite work. For me, I think our midfield three should be Anderson and Tonali and O'Reilly with Cherky on the right wing. Obviously, if we don't get Tonali and Anderson, obviously Rodri, Anderson, and O'Reilly in the midfield, or you can work it out. I think them three, Anderson, Tonali / Rodri, and then O'Reilly should be the midfield three, and O'Reilly and Cherky out on the right. So for me, an absolute starter. And then that I will go to Semenyo now, because obviously I've just said I think Cherky should start right wing. For me, Semenyo should be put on the bench. Semenyo is a goal scorer. There is absolutely no denying that. Antoine Semenyo is a goal scorer. But for me, he's off the ball, sort of dribbling. It's also clunky. So I don't know. It's so untechnical. It works. He's fantastic, and he is going to be an asset to Manchester City in these coming seasons. For me, I think I'd just rather see Ryan Cherky out on that right. I think Ryan Cherky brings more. As much as Semenyo scores the goals and has won us the games, obviously in the FA Cup final, I think it was the FA Cup final. Was it the Carabao? I'm mixing them up in my head. No, O'Reilly was the Carabao Cup final. In the FA Cup final, that back flick that Semenyo did, absolutely unbelievable. He is a goal scorer. There's no denying it. So whether him and Cherky swap out, and we see a lot of rotation sort of with all these superstars that we do have, I do think he sees the bench. And then Jeremy Doku, absolute world superstar. Absolute superstar. It's who's on the back of my this season's 26-27 City shirt. I've got Jeremy Doku on the back. Just signed a new 4-year deal. Couldn't be happier. He is absolutely fantastic, and he's the focal point of this attack. Obviously, bar our number 9, but who he's the goal scorer. Oh, everything goes through Doku. When Doku's on the pitch, the ball gets played to him so often because he speaks his man so consistently. Every ball into the box is dangerous. There is no denying it. So, absolutely love Jeremy Doku, and I'm so happy he's staying. And then that brings me on to Savinho, and now this is another controversial one. This is another really controversial one. Obviously, his deal to Spurs looks so close to going through. Last season, he was also so close to leaving. Do I think Savinho should still be in the Enzo Maresca squad? My honest answer is no, but the board of directors City do seem to love Savinho, so I do think he might be staying on, and Enzo Maresca will get a look at him and then decide whether he wants to keep him or not. There is a player in Savinho, and it's so frustrating because you see glimpses of it, but then you also see other glimpses. His final third ability is so poor. His decision making, his finishing, it's all so poor that everything else he does, because he is good at dribbling, it just really taints it, and you only really see the bad because when you get to the end and he's done so well to get there and arrive there, and then it just picks the wrong thing every time. Whether Enzo Maresca is able to sort of teach him, I'm not overly sure. I'd be really gutted if he goes to Tottenham Hotspur and really becomes that player that he is there and we bought him for and could potentially be sold for 60 million. But for me, I do think as much as I'd love Savinho to stay, I just think we can bring in better. Or bring in someone equally as young that has a ceiling equally as high, and we take the gamble on that, because we have took the gamble on Savinho, and to be honest, he looks so weak. He just looks so weak. He gets pushed off the ball too easily. He isn't good at defending, and in this Premier League, you have to be so physical and so able to defend out on them wings, because your fullbacks rely on you coming back so much. I just don't see Savinho being that player for City, which is such a shame. And then we've got Omar Marmoush, and now I know a lot of people wanted to see a lot more Omar Marmoush, and he is absolutely brilliant. Obviously, we bought him from Frankfurt, I think 60 million euros. And we haven't seen gallons and gallons of him. I think we saw a stint of him last year when Haaland was injured, and he was scoring loads of goals, and I feel like every time Omar Marmoush does play, he does sort of score. So for me, another great squad option. I absolutely don't see a reason why he would want to leave, why he would leave. I think he has spoke to City about getting more game time under Enzo Maresca, and that situation seems to have been resolved. He seems happy with what he was told. But when you've got Erling Haaland as the starting striker, you can't expect to get loads of game time. Erling Haaland is the number 9, is the starter, is the best goal scorer in the world. Let's not beat around the bush. Erling Haaland is the most prolific goal scorer probably the world has ever seen. if we're being completely honest. His goals per game ratio is a disgrace. I think he's got something like 60. He's got maybe no, something like 48 off 50. And I think it is 63 goal contributions across his whole season, including his games with Norway internationally. And no one spoke about him. No one said he's had a great season. It's just sort of average. 63 goal contribution or whatever. It's a really high number. Whatever it is average for Erling Haaland. It's frightening how good he is. And City fans, me included, and my mum especially, we get so frustrated with him because he might score 27 Premier League goals, but he's capable of so much more. He could get 40 goals in a Premier League season if he put every single chance away he got. And because he's that good, when he misses a chance, you get frustrated because he's good enough to finish every single chance. So for me, I do think that is our starting lineup. I think we've got Donnarumma in net, Nunes at right back, Kusanov and Gaze our centre back pairing, Gvardiol at left back. Then I think either if we don't sign Anderson, Rodri will obviously 100% start if he doesn't leave. But I think then it'll be Anderson, Tonali, and O'Reilly. Obviously, if we don't get Tonali, I think it'll be Rodri or Anderson, and then O'Reilly with maybe a Cherky or a Nico Gonzalez or potentially someone else if we sign someone new. And then I think Cherky right wing or right attacking midfielder, sort of being able to stay out wide and also drifting and pick up them pockets, or maybe a Phil Foden going out wide, drifting, because we know Enzo Maresca is so good with Phil Foden, Cole Palmer sort of players. Left wing, Jeremy Doku having the width, driving the ball up the pitch, beating his man 99% of the time, and then the big man up front, the robot himself, Erling Haaland. And then that is Pep Guardiola, who contract hasn't expired, but we haven't sold him. We have just mutually agreed that he will step away, and that was a very emotional line. I did cry at the game when that happened. But yeah, that is my final rankings. That is my squad. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got 9 players in my starting 11. Obviously, as I said, I'm not going to have 11 because I do think our new signings will make the starting 11 when we make them. Eventually, they'll definitely be pushing to be in them. But that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please make sure you do like and subscribe. As I say, it helps me more than you understand. And make sure you let me know down in the comments below what you think of the list, who you think I've got wrong, who do you think I've got right. Let me know if you don't agree with, say, Savinho or Rodri. I absolutely would understand why. I completely get it, but let me know down below. Thank you for watching, and see you all in the next one.